So with a little bit of change of pace and a little bit of refocusing, we are in. Uh, by that I mean, Braun Strowman and Keith Lee are two people I never really focus on. So let's bring them to the forefront. But with that aside, and the unimportant stuff aside, we move to the news. And the news starts with. And the news starts with a report from the Wrestling Observer, and the report from the Wrestling Observer states that ratings for NXT have been up since WWE started bringing the main roster talent down to NXT, which is, I believe, been stuff that they've been doing since post Battleground, with Baron Corbin and Mustafa Ali both showing up on the post Battleground edition of NXT, and Dana Brooke being a part of the Battle Royal last week or this past Tuesday. It seems like both Mustafa Ali and Baron Corbin will be down for the foreseeable future, or at least up until Great American Bash on at the end of July. Yeah, at the end of July. I think based on what we've been hearing and the fact that a lot of talent have asked about Mustafa Ali, wanted to work with Mustafa Ali, I think both Mustafa Ali and Baron Corbin will have runs similar to the likes of the New Day down on NXT, but may have a little bit more to their runs down on NXT than the New Day did before they got pulled back up to the main roster. I mean, I know the question may lead to, if the New Day never got called up, would Kofi have gotten injured? I mean, that's a question you gotta ask, but a question that you ultimately gotta provide as moot, because Kofi and Xavier were main roster wrestlers. They were not NXT wrestlers. But I do think having people like Baron Corbin and Mustafa Ali down in NXT should help. And I also think it doesn't end with just them. With that being said, we shift over to another former NXT star. That former NXT star is Grayson Waller, as Grayson Waller is somebody that I think a lot of people expected to win championship gold down in NXT, but never did. And now he's up on the main roster. Thus far, he has not done anything up on the main roster as far as actively competing. He has only hosted a few editions of the Grayson Waller Effect, one including his former rival AJ Styles. With that being said, there has been questions about Grayson Waller's injury health, if he's injured. The reality is he's not. WWE has a lot of faith in Grayson Waller and is just taking their time to introduce him to the main roster and the fans up on SmackDown. And I think that is a brilliant way to introduce people to somebody new, and something that WWE should do more of. Slowly introduce somebody to the main roster, as opposed to just expect people to know who they are immediately because of NXT, because the reality of the situation is most people don't know a headlock from a hand grenade when it comes to people from NXT, because not everybody watches NXT, especially if they watch the main roster. That doesn't mean they watch NXT. It doesn't mean that they watch NXT. It just means that they watch NXT. I mean, I would say back in the day it was more exclusively with NXT on the main NXT, not on national TV and on the network. That is one of the reasons why a lot of people did not watch NXT. But I would say now, I still think that NXT has their audience and SmackDown and Raw have their audience, but I think that there's a little bit more crossover, maybe not as much as WWE expects, but I do think that there is still a little bit of crossover with NXT. But that's just my opinion. That is just my opinion. I'm not going to sit here and say one way or the other that, somebody on NXT knows who Braun Breaker is and Grayson Waller and Carmelo Hayes and all that stuff. I mean, on the main roster, who only watches the main roster knows the main guys down in NXT because odds are they don't. Odds are they don't. Which is fine. A lot of people a lot of people who only watch the main roster don't. But this is where WWE taking their time to introduce Grayson Waller will be to their advantage. It will be to their advantage in the long run. And I think that is something that WWE should do more of with others in the long run as well. When will Grayson Waller be introduced? I think after Money in the... I think Grayson Waller will be introduced once WWE has a feud for Grayson Waller to be introduced in. And I'm just going to put it out there. Grayson Waller against LA Knight would be a perfect feud and something I would be excited about seeing. But let me know down in the comment section below what you would love to see from Grayson Waller. And we move over to AEW, We move over to AEW and the upcoming Forbidden Door event, as Forbidden Door was plagued with injuries last year. It had a lot of issues and a lot of people scrapped from the event because of injury, including Will Ospreay. But now, according to Tony Khan, in that Sports Illustrated interview that we referenced earlier, Tony Khan spoke about Mercedes Moné potentially coming to AEW, and that there was talk of Mercedes Moné competing at Forbidden Door before her injury at Resurgence, which I think would have been something that a lot of people would have loved to see, but I wouldn't understand why they would have to wait until next year or whatever the case is. Why do you have to put the kibosh on Mercedes Moné doing something with AEW outside of just with Forbidden Door, and maybe not ask for assistance from New Japan by letting them loan out Mercedes for letting him loan out Mercedes for maybe a big pay-per-view a few months from now in Wembley Stadium over in the UK, because I think Mercedes Moné would be another it would be a test of her drawing power, and it would be another coup for AEW for such a big event to get somebody like Mercedes, because I, for one, would love to see Mercedes working with the AEW women's division, even if it's just a cup of coffee, sort of like Takeshita. Sort of like Takeshita, where Takeshita came over, worked in AEW for a bit, and then went back to Japan. I would love to see that, because I would love to see Mercedes Moné stick it to WWE and show that she does have drawing power, that she is a viable person to build a women's division around, and somebody that WWE is losing out on at this point because they didn't believe in her. And speaking of Forbidden Door, right now, Forbidden Door, in my opinion, Forbidden Door 2 has all the potential in the world to be better than Forbidden Door 1, just with 2 matches announced, because Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay for the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship is match number 1, and match number 2 is a dream match everybody was hoping for, and a match that everybody would love to dreamed about seeing when Bryan Danielson left the WWE before joining AEW in 2021. The fact that it's actually happening, it's something I never expected, as Kazuchika Okada will step up and step into the ring with the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, at Forbidden Door 2. If there was two matches that you would want to include on this card and nothing else, Bryan Danielson versus Okada, it's a dream match, defies belief. And Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay, you know that's going to be an amazing match that you would have to figure a certain fellow Canadian may be involved in. But now also last night on Dynamite, it was announced June 17th main event for the first edition of Collision is Bullet Club Gold, Jay White, and Juice Robinson, and Samoa Joe, the reigning Ring of Honor World Television Champion, against FTR and the returning CM Punk. It will unquestionably be the first time in close to 20 years. It will be the first time in close to 20 years that Samoa Joe and CM Punk are in the ring together. And you have to figure that, or you have to ask the question that maybe, just maybe, Punk versus Joe could be Punk's first feud back in AEW. And if that is the case, AEW has the video archives of Ring of Honor where they could tap into the historic rivalry they had in 2000 in Ring of Honor before Punk left for WWE. Either way, Samoa Joe at this point is looking to set his own record in Ring of Honor as the longest reigning Ring of Honor World Television Champion, and frankly, that is something that I think everyone would be excited to see. He's still got a ways to go, but you never know. But again, the main event of AEW Collision was announced last night on Dynamite. Samoa Joe and Bullet Club Gold against Punk and FTR. What a six-man tag team match set to headline the first edition of AEW Collision Saturday, June 17th. If you weren't looking forward to it before, you gotta be a little amped now. With that being said, though, that is it for me with the news, and I will see you in the next one.